Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar where I have brought a guest with me today, Ragna from Star Group. So good morning, Ragna, and welcome to Impero. I am very pleased to have you with me today.
Thank you.
So basically the topic of today's webinar is a use case. So Ragna has basically decided that she's going to open up and tell you guys how she and Stark is using Impero to basically strengthen their control environment. The agenda for today is, first of all, a brief introduction of myself and Ragna. I will then give you a short and quick introduction of the actual platform, so a 15-minute demo. I know there's a lot joining today who hasn't seen the platform before, so in order for you to make sense of it when Ragna is presenting the Star case, I thought it would be a good idea to just give you a brief introduction. So again, Ragna has basically chosen to show us how Stark is using Impero for their day-to-day work. So she's going to bring us some insights, and we're going to have a bit of conversation what is working for Stark and how it can work for you as well. Throughout the webinar, you have the opportunity to ask any questions, and we will make sure to answer them as and when we go along. If there are any answers that are not answered, any questions that are not answered throughout the webinar, we'll hold a little time at the end to answer these. So, Ragna, welcome.
Thank you.
Perhaps you want to introduce yourselves to the attendees today so they know who we have basically brought along.
Yep. So hi everybody, I am Ragna. I am working for Stark Group and I am the head of internal control and enterprise risk management at Stark Group. I joined the company 8 days before Mette closed down the Danish country because of Corona, and I've been working on bettering and developing the field within risk and controls for Stark Group ever since. I am an auditor by education and definitely also by experience, and have been in the auditor's business for more than 20 years now, both as an external auditor, but also definitely focusing on internal audits, process audits, operational, financial, you name it. I think I've looked into it by now. So that's basically me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ragna. And basically you bring a background where you can understand the ideas of a solution like Impero. And this is basically what I'm very keen on having Ragna showcasing for you today, basically how innovative and creative Stark is with using Impero. So I will let you take a short break, Ragna, and I will basically show you what we basically mean when we say Impero. So Impero is a compliance management platform, and what you see here is basically the entrance to Impero. So as long as you have a web browser and you have internet, you have access to Impero. So you have the ability to log in using your email and a password, or you can strengthen the security by adding on either a two-factor authentication or single sign-on. So logging in now to Impero, what you will see is the dashboard of Impero. So before I show you actually the platform, what is important to say is that we work with two different types of users. So we have our administrator, who is basically able to log into Impero and create and update and change controls, and create and update entities and reports as well, and risks within the risk management module. And then we have our normal users, our control performers, our control reviewers, our risk managers, which is basically say what we call a normal user. And 95% of our users in Impero is actually just a normal user, and they don't interact with Impero using the website. They often don't know they're using Impero. They simply just receive an email, click on a link, and perform the control activity that they have received. So what I'm going to show you now for the next probably 10 to 15 minutes is from an administrator perspective. And if I change my view, I will let you know. What you see here is the dashboard, and I will come back to that in just a few seconds. What I want to start showing you is basically the menu of Impero, so you understand what is basically part of the solution. So first of all, we have our risk management module where we identify and we evaluate our risks. We have our control management module where we basically design our controls. And then we have our reporting module where we can monitor, follow up, making sure that these controls are actually performed in a timely manner and as intended, so that we basically bring down the risks as identified in our risk management module. The foundation for all of these three modules is our user management, which is basically making sure that we restrict data to our colleagues so that they can only see what they are meant to be seeing. We then also have our Impero share and our help center. And Impero share is to be seen as a company-specific knowledge sharing center so that you can create templates and you can leverage up on them in different departments, different entities, etc. And then we have our help center, which is the Impero-specific knowledge sharing center where companies, where clients can basically go in and they can have any of their questions answered. And you also always have the opportunity to reach out directly to our customer success team if you have any questions or concerns. Starting in the risk management module, what you'll see here is a list of all of the risk libraries that have been created. And this is where it firstly becomes apparent that although we are primarily within the finance and tax space, you can basically use Impero for any given process within your company. So here you have the ability to basically create all of the risk libraries that makes sense to you. And taking the financial reporting risk as an example, what you basically see here is the risk directory where we identify risk. And then you have your risk map where you evaluate your risk. So within the risk directory where we're doing the risk identification, you have the opportunity to basically sort your risks on processes and sub-processes, however it makes sense in your case. And once you have defined your hierarchy, we have then at Impero created a, say, standard risk card example. And this is standard out of the box, but it's completely flexible, so you have the opportunity to basically alter it so that it makes sense to your exact risk framework. So all we need is a name, a description of the risk, and then we're working with scope definition, which is basically the opportunity to prepare a top-down risk assessment and combine it with a bottom-up risk assessment so that we make sure that we have the full overview and the complete risk landscape identified. So once we have described our risk, we then have the ability to attach risk attributes to each of these risks. Again, completely flexible, so if it doesn't make sense for you to have a financial statement assertion or an objective attached, we can basically delete them and add what attributes make sense to you. So once you have identified your risk, we then work with entities. And this is now where we have the opportunity to sit in Ragna's example, she can sit at a group level and she can then define the risks that she then wants to apply to specific entities for them to evaluate. So in this instance here, we have basically attached this one risk to 4 different entities. And what that means in practical terms, and now we're jumping into our risk evaluation step. And if I go down to the exact same risk that I showed you before, what it means is that we have basically populated 4 risks now, 1 for each entity. So you have the opportunity to basically prepare a differentiated risk evaluation per entity. You have the opportunity to push out the risk for evaluation by the people who knows the business the best, the entity responsibles. Like for the risk card example, we have prepared a generic evaluation example that again can be completely tailor-made to match your risk framework. So what you see here is the inherited information from the identification phase, and now we have added the evaluation. So for each of the risks, you have the ability to first of all perform an inherent risk assessment, currently using a 5x5 scale with this taxonomy you're seeing on the screen now. Again, can be tailor-made to match whatever framework you're using. It may be that you're saying, well, we want multiple dimensions. We want to include compliance risks as well, financial risks, compliance risks, and reputational risks. Then you basically have the opportunity to add them here and create an intelligent calculation based on evaluation. So once you have your inherent risk assessment, you then choose a response. So how do you want to respond to this risk? What's most important to say here is that when you choose the reduction of the risk, you then basically start the connection from the risk management module to the control management module. So this simply gives you the opportunity to attach controls from your control library to your risks. You have the ability to work with risk coverage as well, but that is optional. You also have the opportunity to add comments if there are, for some reason, some controls that are handled outside of Impero. Once you've identified your controls mitigating the risks, you then have the opportunity to set your residual impact and residual likelihood. And once this evaluation has been done, Ragna, for example, can basically sit comfortably at a group level and get a complete overview of the risk exposure within the start group for a given, say, process or team. And what is even more important is that basically Ragna has the ability to dive deep into these, say, risks here. So if she only wants to look at Impero Sweden, for example, sorry, I thought there was a Sweden entity. Let's say South Africa. I'm not going to show you that today, but basically she had the opportunity to then basically filter down. So the only view she's getting is the, for example, South Africa entity. And likewise, as I was saying before, with the restriction of access to data, if you are assigned to the South Africa entity, all you can see is this entity in particular. So at a high level, we have the opportunity here to basically understand our inherent risk exposure and our residual risk exposure. So that was the risk management module. Going back to the control management module, where we have now created a link from our risk management module, we basically work with what we call control program. And you should see that as containers for different types of controls. So in this instance here, we have examples of financial controls and tax controls, but we may also have IT controls, compliance controls, etc. Showing you a specific example of a control, what you will see is that, again, Impero has basically built up a generic control template so that you make sure that you have all of the attributes to make it an effective control. So a control template consists of 4 building blocks. First of all, we have the name of a control and we have a control description, not to be seen as the activity that the control performer is to do, but it could, for example, be a control objective and background information. We also have the opportunity to do deep links into SharePoint. We then work with what we call tags, and that should first of all be seen as control attributes. So it could be, for example, is this a key control or a non-key control? And you then have the ability to report on that later on. So again, control attributes, but even more importantly, it should also be seen as reporting dimensions. So however you want to report on your data, as long as you have tagged your controls with the tag that you would like to report upon, then you have the ability to do so. We then jump on to our next building block, which is our scheduling engine, where we basically have the ability to set whatever given frequency that we would like our control to be performed. This is also here where we define when the control performer is first being notified about this control that they are due to perform. So all in all, you have the ability to basically set your annual wheel of internal control. You have the ability to define the deadlines for all of your controls within your framework. You can set customized due dates for each month. So it may be that you're saying in August, for example, it is summer holiday, so they either need an extended or a shortened period to perform the control. And this way you don't have to sit and do housekeeping every month. You basically set your due dates once a year, and then everything just happens automatically.
Actually, if I can add a thing here, this is brilliant. Specifically, if you have a company that has a calendar year, no, a physical financial year that is not the calendar year, like Stark has, you can actually set the system up so that it understands and reports based on our financial year, which starts 1st of August. So usually that is not something you can get into your systems. Just a feature we really appreciate.
Thank you. The third building block is our assignment part. So this is where we tell Impero who should be performing, who should potentially be reviewing these controls. And the way that it works here is that we have the ability to assign a control performer, and we have the option to assign a reviewer and a secondary reviewer. Even more importantly, we are working with our assignment tags once again. So I have the ability to basically, in this instance here, determine that myself, I am going to perform the bank reconciliation in this instance here for company 300 in Denmark, whilst my colleague Morten is going to perform a bank reconciliation for company 200 in Denmark. So this simply means that we are, on the given frequency, pushing out 2 controls to 2 different colleagues, and we are getting 2 responses back. We also have the ability to work with user groups. So if you're working, say, for example, in a shared service center, or if you're working in a department where it doesn't matter if it's employee A or B who's performing the control, then we can assign a group to basically make the process more efficient. The last building block of the control template is basically what we call the heart of the control. And we very much see it as a questionnaire, a control questionnaire, where we have different tools to build up this questionnaire so that in very simple terms, we can very precisely tell our control performers what to do in order to make sure that they perform the control effectively. So as an example, what we have built here is, first of all, a question for the control performer to confirm that they have performed their control. They have an instruction of what needs to be done. We have a hyperlink for a detailed process manual on SharePoint if they need some more guidance. And we also have the ability to basically communicate with our control performers and say, we want this standardized quality way of you to perform the bank reconciliation. So please go ahead and use this template. We then work with required, options, and condition. Required simply means that the control performer has to answer this question in order to submit the control. And conditions simply means that the control performers are only being presented with the questions that they need to be concerned about. Anything else is left out. So as an example, if the control performer confirms that they have performed the control activity, well, then they should attach supporting documentation. If they haven't performed, if they say that they haven't performed the activity, well, then they're simply not being presented with this opportunity to upload documentation. I now show you this control in a preview, but what that also shows you is basically the view that the control performer sees when they click on the link in the email that they receive. So I am now a control performer. I have swapped from being an administrator to now being a control performer. So what I can see here is that I have to perform a bank reconciliation. I can see that it's for the period of November. I can read a bit of the objective and the background information of the control. And now I can simply get started with performing my control. So I can say, yes, I confirm that I have performed this control. I have downloaded my template and used that for my reconciliation as an example. And I then have the opportunity to upload it here and write any additional comments that I may like. Or it may be that I'm saying, sorry, I didn't have time. I haven't performed the control. And then I have to explain why I didn't perform the control. And then we've taken one last example with us within this control template example, which is basically a self-evaluation of the control effectiveness. So in my own opinion, as and when I have performed my control, do I believe it's effective or not? And the reason why we brought this example along is basically to show you that in the reporting module, you have the ability to basically pinpoint these specific answers given by the control performer. I don't have the opportunity to submit the control here now because I'm in preview, but it would simply just be checking off what you need to check off, and then adding documentation, providing your comments, and then you say submit. All of the activity on the controls are basically logged in our activity log. So for each individual control, we have the opportunity to see who it has been performed by, when it has been performed by, who has reviewed it, etc. The last thing I want to show you before giving Ragna an opportunity to tell about how brilliantly staff are using Impero is the reporting module. So we've now talked about the risk identification. We have talked about the control management to make sure that we mitigate the risks. But even more importantly, we need to be able to monitor and make sure that these controls has actually been performed as we expect them to. So as I was saying, for the control template example, we have two types of reports. We have our task-based reports where we have the ability to basically dive right into specific answers given by the control performer. And then we have our standard reports, which is a status report of a given period. And we have our workload report, which can basically show you the future workload. I'm now just taking an example of a status report to show you how it works. Simply what you see here is an overview of your control performance, in this instance for the period of October month. What you can see here is that 11 activities were to be performed, and only 6 of them have been completed. 5 of them are still overdue. You then have the ability to, again, coming back to our intelligent way of tagging our controls, you can basically show your reporting in any dimension you would like based on your control tags. So say, for example, rather than having it in a country view, you would like it to be a company view. And you now can see here that it's basically company 200, 300, and 400, which is an issue. You don't have the ability to dive deep into the data from the visualization, and this is why we have a data table below, where you basically have the ability to dive in, again, pivot on your controls information based on the text that have been used, all the way down to the lowest level. As for the controls, we have the ability to basically communicate with our responsible parties via an email. So as an example, I could be the responsible for the Denmark, France, Sweden operation. So I now receive an email in this instance here, the first day of the month. And it may be that there is a message in this email saying, hey, Shanna, you're responsible for these countries. Please make sure that the controls has been performed timely. And if not, please take due action. I now click on my link in my email and I get this exact view here. And I can then see 5 of these controls have not been performed and I need to take due action. And this is where all of these numbers you see in the table here are interactive. So I basically have the ability to click on my overdue controls in this example. And it takes me to an activity list where I can see that I am actually the one who hasn't performed my controls. So we know, for example, that Shanna is very lazy. So I can simply send a reminder, or it could be that Shanna is on vacation, so we need to reassign it to a new colleague. So just through a few simple clicks, you have the ability to do all of the daily housekeeping and simply just reassign controls to colleagues if needed. So that is high level what I want to show you in Impero, and I think it's even more important now to basically give you the word, Ragna, and basically talk us through the journey of Stark. So it may be, we do have a lot of nationalities, a lot of countries joining us today. So perhaps if you could just start by setting the scene and talk a bit about who are Stark as a company and how do you generally work with risks and controls?
Yes. So Stark is, I think, one of the bigger builders merchants in Europe. We are very big in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Germany, and which are the countries that we're operating in. And being a builder's merchant actually means that you have to have a lot of controls and processes that are working, because we actually are in a way in an area where, for example, health and safety controls, environmental regulations, a lot of external aspects actually affect the way that we work on a daily basis. And we have a little bit of a special setup, a process in Stark. So I'm a part of Stark Group. We are a small company located here in Denmark with only experts within our fields. We have around 30 to 40 employees, and everybody there is an expert within what they do. Because in every country we operate in, we have a local headquarters. And the local headquarters is actually self-sufficient on every item and every area. So our task in the group is actually to try to combine and take efficiency out of the size of the company in total. But our local headquarters actually have a lot of freedom to operate and work in the way that they see fit. So that is kind of where I come in. So in 2020, I joined the company and was asked to look into how can we actually deduct our statuses and situations from this broad perspective of controls and processes that are already operating all over all these countries. And that has been work. So, yeah, quite a journey. It is actually quite a journey, yes. And that's what I'd like to show you maybe a little bit of glimpse into today, and also tell you a little bit about like some of the thoughts and considerations we made on the way to getting where we are today.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, if you just
I'll take control.
take control.
Yes.
And
So the first thing we did was actually to kind of define what's the vision of what we wanted to do. And for me, given my audit background, it became obvious that we just needed a good, solid, kosher approach to the governance model that we wanted to build. And we wanted it to be covering all the areas of business we were in. We wanted it to be aligned within the critical controlled areas, because again, even though we are builders merchants in all these countries, and we basically from the outside do the same things, none of my countries are actually working in the same way. So how do you align that? And that's what we have been working on now for 2 years. How can we tailor-make the governance process and procedures without disturbing too much the business and all the good work that is already being done there, but still in a way where we can compare? And that's been one of our biggest challenges, actually. We also, of course, want to be able to link our controls to the risks that we're working with within the area. And what also became very apparent to me in the beginning of my employment with Start Group was that we needed somewhere where we could have the documentation accessible. Because when you have this amount of flexibility to working in your own company, you do things in your own folders and share drives, and accessibility across the company is actually quite hard to obtain. So our goal was to have a team where members could actually work together, each in their own area, but relying on the total experience of the team and the team members. And that's what we have actually been looking into. So our team, as we have it right now, is located, we have a team member in all of our countries except Norway, which I'm covering. And what we needed and what became apparent in the beginning, as I said, was that we needed a common platform, somewhere where we could actually work together for moving forward into aligning things and the beautiful work we've been doing within the controls and procedures. And so this was maybe just to inform that we are actually quite broad, and how can you actually combine that many countries and with those few employees? Because if you notice it, there's actually just one position in each box. And we have right now, I think, 11,500 employees in these countries. So we're not a small company anymore. So I think what we did actually is that during the summer of 2020 is that we brought together the team, and these were people that were all in their own countries working within the control and risk framework without actually really reaching out to other colleagues in other countries within the same areas. All of these persons are located, I think without exception, directly underneath the local CFO. So we have quite high organizational aspects into this team. And what I did was I brought them together, and then we defined what were our needs, what were the purposes, what was it that we actually wanted to do here. And for us, it wasn't so important actually to get a system that was very advanced, because one of the things we identified was that we needed something that was flexible, that could grow with us as long as we were on this journey. We didn't have a complete tailor-made control framework that we could just get some consultants to push into a system. We needed something that was easy. It had a good and sound approach to it, something that we could actually work with. We really, really liked the fact that we didn't have to have consultants or outside assistants, or not even our IT department, to help us with doing this. And also something where we could change our mind actually during the process, because the further into this process we come, the smarter we get, I think.
Yeah.
And we have actually changed our mind quite a bit of times by now. So that was really important for us. And so we invited a couple of companies in to pitch for us, and I think it became very quickly very apparent that Impero was just the right fit for us.
That's brilliant.
That's,
And we're really pleased to work with you. So basically what I hear you saying is that before Impero, all of the things were all of the processes very fragmented, still are. They were, all of the entities, all of the companies are doing their processes controls in their own way, storing it, used to store it in personal share folders, share drives, etc. So
actually, sometimes folders, where the local control person could actually access them. But I mean, a lot of their work, as I identified it, because of, well, it was Corona, so everything here has also happened through Teams. But everything was really paper heavy. It was very manual. The auditors actually spent quite a bit of time going through folders, checking, have they now uploaded this? Did they click off, the Excel sheet that was the overview? If they didn't click it off, was that because they haven't done it or just because they forgot to click the X? Those kind of things that actually, to me, it's not really adding any kind of value to the company to spend time on this. So that is one of the things we really wanted to move away from. And also the other part of the paper, having things where you print them out and sign them. How can you do that when everybody's working from home? That didn't really work well either. But we all know that an Excel sheet is not really the best audit evidence as a standalone document. So how can you actually bridge that too? And I think all of those things we actually got very nicely fitted into Impero.
So basically some of the deciding factors, as I was listing down when you said them, was basically the flexibility of a platform where you have the opportunity to change your mind without having to start all over. It's the ease of use, and it was this good and sound approach where you don't have to have external consultants basically involved in order to design and embed your control framework.
Definitely.
So Ragna, after choosing Impero, how long did it actually take you to implement the system?
Well, we actually, so the implementation, I'm going to start with another thing. So one of the things we actually spent quite a bit of time on was to address the fact that, first of all, who would be the receivers of our work? What was it that we actually wanted to illustrate to them? Who's going to be reading this? Who needs access down to the core data in there? And when we had identified that, we also needed to identify an approach to how am I going to mark a control in a way where I can see that this is the same control, irrelevant if it's performed in Sweden, Finland, or Norway, irrelevant if it's based in one system or another system, if it's automatic or completely manual, it's actually covering the same risk. Those kinds of references, we got the team together to actually build up. And for me, it was important for them to understand these basics so that they would understand why we were going to build up Impero in the way that we did. But as soon as we've gotten these things down and mapped, it actually just took a day. So literally the day we decided, okay, now we're ready. This is a control we have here, let's put it in. And I think within the first day when we were working on it, we actually pushed out 30 controls. That was the easy part of this.
So implementing Impero in one day, of course, with a bit of a thought process on the structure and on the hierarchies before then, but that basically comes to say how easy and efficient it is to get to use Impero.
Yeah.
So I think our guest today is very keen to get an understanding of how you're actually using the platform. So perhaps you want to tell a bit about that.
So when introducing this, of course, also to, for example, our audit committee and our top management, what I've told them is that we have basically 3 main areas of collaboration within my team. And that's the control part, the enterprise risk management. And then we have collaboration with our auditors. We actually also manage our issues from the management letters from our auditors, Deloitte, in the system by now. We have quite an extensive branch audit team because, as I said before, health and safety risks are really a high priority in Stark. And we also are collaborating with the IT security group. As you saw perhaps before in the team, we have a member from that group also in our team. What we do in the controls part is that we help, my team with the identification, and we set it up in Impero and submit it to our control submitters. We do actually also do control testing of the quality and documentation, also documented in Impero by now. And then, of course, we do all the reporting from the Impero framework, both to our management and to audit committee. Within the risk and enterprise risk management, we also are in charge of the risk identification and the mitigation management. Again, something that we have completely aligned within Impero. We have monitoring, actually quite extensive monitoring on our risk development, and specifically those in the higher categories. And then we also do risk reporting to our executive committee and the audit committee, again, directly from Impero. And what we've used then for the Deloitte, yeah, that's our external auditor, but for our audit comments is also the risk management set up in Impero, where we have registered all of the management letter comments from the auditors, both within the operational part and within the IT part. And from there, we actually also monitor development of mitigation and how we are evolving or solving the problems and issues pointed out by the auditors. And that, I have to say, has really done wonders for us, getting the attention to this area, not just in a panic 2 weeks before the auditors come next time, but actually something that we're working with throughout the year.
So again, come as an example where it may be that we're saying that we're strong within the finance and tax processes. This is a brilliant way of showing that it can basically be used for any process. In this instance, the management letter comments.
Yes, definitely. And maybe to comment that, I think the tax process was actually one of the last ones we implemented now in the control framework. We've been more focusing on the other aspects of things and getting that into the system. And apparently the creativity seems to have no limits with us. No, but for the control in Impero, I know you said that you'd use the control programs based on the control areas. We don't do that, actually. We have it per company and different aspects per company. But again, back to the fact that you can use this setup any way it seems fit for you. And I think what's one of the things that really talked to us about choosing Impero is that you don't have to be defined about defined by the standard setup within the system. You can actually use this in so many ways to tailor-make it to your company setups. And what we do is that we have control programs for each entity. We have a standard controller template for all the financial controls, let me say that, and those are managed by the local auditor in each of the company. And then by doing that, we have this unified metadata approach across all the entities. So we have defined what are mandatory tags and tag categories to attach to each control, so that we support the reporting across the units after the work is done. And what I really like about this is that everything, all setup changes, everything is manageable by the team itself. We are not having to have consultants help us with this. We then, of course, extract reports based on the metadata, and as Sanne showed you in the beginning here, the task-based report based on the answers in the controls, we use that a lot. That's actually also the base, for example, for our quality testing in the system. So we have automated our audit reports, another area where people were spending quite a lot of time before gathering data throughout the year and pushing out a report that when it actually arrived with management, it was usually a little bit aged. Now it's just pushed through to them on a monthly basis, and they can just follow up on it there. That was the control testing, yes. And we have also now a very easy overview for the auditors to look into and see how we're actually managing in the different areas here, both with on-time performance of the controls, but also the quality of it. And of course, then the documentation itself. Going forward is definitely one of our aims is to just give our auditors a read access in here, and then the prepared by client list, the notorious list, feared by everybody, once a year at least, should actually be really short for our purposes. And we bought the single sign-on edition to the system, so our users can very, very easily, it's 2 clicks to log in when they get an email in their box to fill out a control. And as I said, everything about the access management is just handled by the team. I think you've had, what, 3 references from us, I think, about access management since we started as a client. The rest we can handle ourselves. And I think also the user kind of appreciates this, because it's not another system that they have to understand and click through and everything. We thought about what we wanted them to answer, and it's very easy. It's like a Gallup thing, you know. Everybody knows how to fill up a Gallup questionnaire. This is the same. It doesn't really require any kind of teaching, I think. So for the risk maps, this is something that we use a lot in Stark. So we use it, of course, for our enterprise risk management, where we handle all the strategic risks in the company. And we are also now introducing the local risk setup, because we want to be able to monitor a little bit closer on some of the elements that are maybe not that risky that they require top management attention. But we still like to provide them with a platform where they can actually do their own risk monitoring and handling. The issue register, which is, as I said before, where we handle all of the elements from the management letter from our external auditor. And I have to say that specifically has really changed the entire approach towards the audit. This year, as I said before, we have a very strange financial year starting 1st of August. So we are actually publishing our annual report right about now. And so we had the auditors visiting this summer and a hard close here in August. And I think even the auditors were a bit surprised about the details and knowledge and how much we'd actually moved in the past year, because we'd written up all of these issues. These are no longer something that we keep in a drawer and just a few persons are able to look into it. This is actually addressed, and every single one of the issues has an owner. And they, depending a little bit on the rating of the issue, they will be asked frequently about how are you doing now? How much coverage do you think you have? Will you be able to solve this before the auditors come back? And that is actually also reported to our top management. And then we have the control and process overview, because as I said before, one of our issues is that we do things in so many different ways. We still do basically the same things. So I'm using that risk map actually to govern and cover, so that I can see that we have effective control, and we have control covering all our basic risk areas in all the companies. So this is where I link those, primarily actually right now for my benefit, so that I know where should we actually maybe be developing and setting in, but where are we good. So our enterprise risk management. Again, I also like the fact that you're able to set this up with the data that fits your company. So I know that you have the standard template, but I don't think we actually use that for any of the risk maps that we're using currently. What I really like about this is that we had a very good, very thorough risk management setup in Stark when I came there. We had a matrix with 5 or 7 different evaluation criteria. So you could evaluate your risk based on the EBITDA or the health and safety or regulation. But what was required to fill it out was a lot of workshops, a lot of interaction, one-on-ones, a lot of heavy work into getting and gathering all this data. And what we have now is that we've loaded it all into Impero. It gave us a very good overview of where did we have risks that we had actually registered in a little bit of different way between the companies. Remember, everybody is working in a different way, but they were actually the same risks. So now it became apparent that we could align these things and working with the same risks in the companies, but still actually evaluating them for different levels, because, well, the threat is actually different depending on which country you're in. And it also allowed us to assess with individual risk owners. getting their feedback into the system, uploaded into the evaluation, and taking that then to top management so they can be involved on a higher level. So it allows us actually to get, as you said before, from the bottom, but also serving the purposes of the top. And I would also say that before doing an update might take a good part of a year with a lot of these workshops and a lot of discussions. Now we send out questionnaires 2 to 3 times a year, asking people to assess their risks, taking it twice a year up to management, and also doing questionnaires with regards to our annual report, identifying new risks. It's becoming a tool that you can actually use in your daily activity instead of a rather tiresome task being performed out of necessity, as it was before. And again, back to the fact that it's me and one other person that is actually maintaining all of this. So it's really, I think, creating a lot of value with a minimum input of employees within the area. And I think these days, that's a good thing. So the issue register, again, tailor-made so that it fits with how our external auditor is reporting for us. So set up with the data that fits with that reporting one-on-one. Again, making the link between the risk. If you do the reduction in, as Janne showed you in the risk map before, you can attach a control to it. And there you can actually have the risk owner providing you with feedback on how is it actually going on mitigating this issue that the auditors have worked with you on. And now that we have it on a heat map, it is also very easy to identify what are the high risks. Because as an auditor, you usually experience that people will address the management letter in availability order, meaning that they usually spend a lot of effort on the easy ones because they're kind of nice and easy to check off. And then when you come to the hard one, the year is over and you haven't really been looking into it. And that's really not the priority we would like to see in this area. We'd like to have it the other way around. And I think this setup actually really works with us, helping us do that. Also, again, in an easy way. It's just an email. And everybody has time for an email answer. The control overview. This is where we took, this is actually, I think, based mostly on what we did in the beginning of our journey here, where we identified all of our processes and procedures and identified the risks that we had within each given area. This is my link, this is my overview of how are we going, do we have all our countries with us, is everybody working in the right high-risk areas that are in our industry and our business. And again, back to the fact that it's easy to maintain from us. It doesn't take a lot of time and it's shareable between the team without having to have files and folders. Everybody has access in the team to Impero, so everybody can look into it here and see what's the coverage, how am I doing, do I need to focus on another area that I'll be looking into.
Brilliant. So basically, a lot of innovative ways of using the platform, not only just the traditional risk and controls thinking.
Okay.
If you could perhaps put a word to what, say, what results Impero have brought, what value it's brought to implementing this. Perhaps you could share that with us.
Well, I think it's really created a way of efficiency for us. We're using the auditors that we have in the team, their experience in a much better way. They are now focusing on looking into the quality of what is submitted, helping our colleagues actually build a stronger documentation based on this, and spending less time, on things that actually don't add any value to it. Because reporting, if you've done your work, those things the system will just give you automatically. So we're using what the experience we have and the talent of our people to a much better way. And I've gotten feedback from some of the team parts where they were kind of critical. Now she came into the team and insisted on using this new system. But actually, we had an evaluation session last week, and the feedback was so positive. They were so happy about it because it is also much more fun to actually use your talent in a good and efficient way and not just have you put an X in an Excel sheet.
Brilliant, thank you. And in simple words, how would you basically describe Impero to someone who is unfamiliar with our platform?
I would actually say that it's a very intuitive system. I think I like the easiness of it. I like how approachable it is, and actually kind of also like the Impero network, because I think we had connections to other Impero users when we decided on buying the system. This is actually my second time choosing the system and implementing it into a company. And I kind of like that we actually share experiences like this. I'm showing you some of the ideas I've gotten because it doesn't cost me anything. It's not a risk for me actually to show you how you can also use the system. And in that way, I think we all help each other a lot within this Impero family to get better and use it for whatever needs we have.
And that is very much appreciated for sure. So last question, Ragna, what is next on your Impero agenda?
It's actually the ESG. So Stark is very ambitious with regards to climate. We just got an EcoVadis Platinum certification, meaning that we're top 1% within our area with regards to those. But as we also state very clearly in our new ESG report, is that the documentation behind all the good work we have is maybe not that well set up. So actually, I have my first meeting with our local responsible on Friday. So we're going to build actually our ESG documentation platform in Impero. Definitely the next thing on our agenda.
That's interesting. So lots of more exciting things happening in your Impero platform.
Definitely.
So we have a few minutes left for questions. And we have one of the participants asking, does Impero need to be implemented in the IT landscape of the company, or is it browser-driven only solution? So it is a cloud-based solution. It's hosted by Microsoft Azure, so no need to implement anything within your IT landscape. As I was saying in the beginning, as long as you have a web browser and internet, you are good to go. So Ragna, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure having you here. I hope that you can basically see how creative you can be with Impero, how you can use it in innovative ways to basically make sure that you have your processes understood and your controls strengthened, and that you can basically monitor that they have been performed as intended. So all in all, you can basically strengthen your overall control environment. So thank you so much for everyone's time today. It was a pleasure as always. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Ragna as well. And if you have any desire to see more webinars, more demos of Impero, you can go to our website where we have more technical ones that are diving deep into either the risk module or the control management module. So thank you all for your time and have a great day.